Welcome to JailBreak Africa. I'm your host, Jerry Moyazungu, the Chartered Vendor. I usually hang out with Steve Chadzoka, but today he's not around, so I'm alone. So today we want to hear something. Today I'm hanging around with Tamuka Chinjende. He's the Managing Director for M&J Zambia. Tamuka, welcome to JailBreak Africa.
Thank you so much, Jerry. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, so how's Zambia?
Zambia is perfect. Zambia is okay. Although there are one or two things that needs to be fixed, but overall everything else is cool. It's fine.
Yeah, that's what we want to hear about, because you notice that Africa is in a problem. Africa is in a quandary. We depend so much on America. We depend so much on Europe. I think right now the kwacha is suffering. What's happening in Zambia?
Yeah, because that's actually one of the major highlights for 2023. I think for the last 6 months, the kwacha has been on we cannot say really on a free fall, but it's actually been losing a lot of value. And I think one of the biggest causes is actually the high demand, especially when it comes to the kwacha itself, because a lot of people are actually importing products from outside, which is actually putting a lot of pressure on the kwacha, which is actually resulting in the devaluation of the currency.
Okay. Yeah. Is it because of the balance of payments? Is it because of the imports and the exports balance?
Yeah, but mainly it's because of the balance of payments, as well as even the balance of the imports and exports. Was one of the things that you actually find, especially when it comes to Zambia. Unlike an economy like Zimbabwe, because you actually find that for Zimbabwe is a multi-currency economy. And one of the things that you actually find is that here, foreign currency is readily accessible. Unlike in Zambia, because for
Zambia,
you to
have to access it through the bank only.
You have to access it through the bank only. And the only way to actually access it, you cannot sell directly to get foreign currency. So you actually need to have the kwacha first. You have to convert it so that you can actually get to access in terms of the US dollars.
Okay.
So as an economy that is growing, you actually find that there are a lot of manufacturing companies that are coming up. But for those companies to be able to produce, one of the things that they actually need to do is that they need to import raw materials for the production processes. And the only way they can actually do that is through foreign currency. And you actually find that then actually puts a lot of pressure on the kwacha itself.
So as a business consultant, do you think right now is the right time to invest in Zambia? I think soon after the 2021 election, when President Hakainde Hichilema was elected, most of the people, they flocked into Zambia, and most of the businesses, Zimbabwe included, South Africa and the rest of the world, are targeting Zambia as, I think, the primary country to invest into. Yeah. I think we talk of Zambia, we talk of Rwanda. Those are the countries most of the investors are actually, they're interested in investing in those countries. What do you think can be done for the country to be stable, or do you also advise someone to invest into Zambia right now? And why is it important for them to invest into Zambia? Are they supposed to be scared by the deflation or actually the reduction of value of the kwacha, which is, we cannot say it's on a free fall, because us in Zimbabwe are not even shocked when the Zimbabwean dollar loses value by 1,000 points. We are not even shocked. Right now, people are only shocked because Zambia has lost, I think from when the president came in 2016 up to now, the kwacha has lost about 10 points.
Because I think the kwacha has lost 10 points. But going on to the investment side, was I would strongly encourage anyone who wants to invest should actually be looking at Zambia as an investment destination. And one of the things that you even find, especially when it comes to the kwacha, because the inflationary, it's a cycle. Was one of the things that you actually find is that as you actually even go into the year, maybe as you actually approach March, April, it's going to actually gain value, because there is actually a deal with the IMF that's there, and it's actually expected to say that in January, IMF will actually be putting a foreign currency injection into the economy, which will actually ease pressure in terms of the kwacha at the end of the day. And one of the things also, and one of the major reasons why I also even encourage businesses to invest into Zambia, Jerry, is this. Zambia, I think if you're actually looking at the Southern African Development Community, Zambia is actually number 3 in terms of the country with the highest population. And one of the things that you actually find is that a major part of the population of Zambia is what you can actually fit into a middle class. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that you actually find is that in terms of consumption, because for any economy and for any business, I think the existence of a middle class is one of the biggest indications to actually say that can a business actually find a market in an economy. And if you're actually looking at a middle class, let's take, for example, I think in Lusaka province alone, you're actually looking at a middle class that is estimated at 1.1 to 1.2 million people. That's a big number for let's maybe say a single province out of a country maybe with 20 million people. So at the end of the day, if you're actually looking for a country with a readily accessible market, and despite, let's maybe say, the challenges with the currency, Zambia also has a very working, the banking system works. Even when it actually comes to lending, when it actually comes to accessing financing, and this is not only for businesses, but they're actually even saying that for individuals. Because you actually find that for some individuals to consume some products, they actually need financing from banks, maybe in the form of loans, for them to actually be able to consume. And right now, in terms of the microfinance industry, it's very big. You have microfinance companies that are lending, you have banks that are lending, and also even for some businesses, let's take, for example, if you have a solar company, you can even go into Zambia, you strike a deal with the bank so that if an individual wants to buy a solar package, they can just get financing through a bank. And then you actually find that it also even gives you now access to the market of customers that can actually be provided to you through the banks that are there.
Okay. It's interesting. Here at JailBreak Africa, we want to scrutinize the IMF. You said when the IMF is going to inject money into Zambia, about 100 and something million, isn't it?
Yeah.
The country is going to be stable. At JailBreak Africa, is Zambia still in jail, or Zambia is still in jail in terms of the economy? Is the economy still controlled by the West, or is they are controlling their own economy? Because from what you have actually said, it seems as if we are depending too much on foreign direct investments. What can be done for Zambia to be sustainable? To say probably Zambia is now independent in terms of their economy. What can you talk about in terms of their mines? I understand that they've got a copper mines.
Yeah.
Are those miners paying enough taxes?
Right. That's an interesting topic of conversation, Jerry. And one of the things that you actually find, especially when it comes to the Zambian economy, right? Because right now we're actually saying that, yes, there is actually that dependence on the IMF. And historically, if you look at African countries that have actually taken money from the IMF, one of the major things that has actually happened is inflation.
Exactly.
If you look at it, whenever IMF comes, inflation follows.
I remember ISAP in Zimbabwe.
Exactly. That was also even a chapter for Zimbabwe that is there. But one of the things that you actually find is that I think the major thing that's actually happening is that we are not generating enough foreign currency at the end of the day. And one of the ways that we can actually generate foreign currency, especially when it comes to Africa, we have resources. We have resources, number one, in the form of land. We have resources in the form of minerals. I think if you look at Zambia, there's a lot of underutilized land. Yes, there are farmers who are actually doing very well.
Exactly.
But it's not enough given the size of the country and the land that could actually be utilized. You go to Copper Belt, there are all those copper mines that are there, copper that could actually even be exported. We have gold mines that are there, gold that could actually even be exported to actually generate foreign direct investments. But one of the major challenges that I'm actually seeing with Africa is overregulated. That's the biggest challenge of Africa. Right now, if you have a mine in Zimbabwe and you basically want to do another setup, let's maybe say in Zambia, for example, you actually find that if I'm to compare, let's maybe say you want to compare with the United States of America. The strength of America is to actually say that you have 50 countries that operate as a single country. If you have a business, let's maybe say in California, you can actually even extend that to New York. You can extend that to Texas, to all these other states, and you can operate. It's the same thing with the European Union. You have, let's maybe say you're in Germany, you want to go to France. Using your German passport, you can just go there, you're in France, you're actually allowed to operate. But now if you're in Africa, even, and it's not only for Africans, even for Chinese investors, even for maybe Indians that are actually coming to set up, you actually start with basically the investment office. You need an investment license. You are coming with capital. But they'll actually tell you that you need to get an investment license. Okay, for me to get an investment license,
is it in Zambia?
What do I need? They'll actually tell you have to deposit 250,000 into a Zambian bank account.
US dollars.
That's in United States dollars. Right? So
250,000 for me to be an investor in Zambia.
For someone to actually be an investor. And the biggest challenge with that is to actually say that yes, for mines, there are companies that can actually afford to do that.
Exactly.
In terms of maybe if someone actually wants to start a mine, of course, it's a no-brainer. You should actually have that kind of capital. But you can actually look, there is someone who can even be coming into Zambia. Maybe they just want to go into textiles to just produce cloth and to actually even be able to export that cloth maybe to other countries. Even when it actually comes to human capital, I understand in Zimbabwe right now there is actually this very big company that is actually exporting talent outside to actually say that they came here, they set up, right? After they set up, maybe they started recruiting accountants, administrators who they are actually outsourcing maybe to companies that are in the United States, in Europe and everything. And those companies are paying in US dollars, which actually means that they're generating foreign direct investment into the Zimbabwean economy. Now, let's actually look at someone who wants to do that kind of setup in Zambia. That's a setup that you can do maybe 50,000. You don't need 250,000.
Even 50,000. You just need an office.
You just need an office and you actually need a market outside.
Exactly.
Which actually means that that business can generate a lot of foreign currency. Even more than maybe a small scale mine.
Or we can even talk about your business.
Exactly.
Your business.
Exactly.
You don't need a lot of capital to set up your business.
You don't need.
But
a
how
lot of
much
capital.
Forex are you getting into Zambia? Through probably the investors' investments, which are actually facilitating from India, Germany, South Africa. People are bringing poor US dollars into Zambia, depositing into your account.
Exactly.
That's Forex, which is getting into Zambia. But for you to get that license, you're required to fork out 250,000 US dollars.
That's the biggest.
So let us talk about, yes, as much as it a JailBreak Africa, we are saying probably the foreign countries are blaming the United States of America. We can blame Europe, we can blame China, we can blame Indians, but isn't it the right time our African leaders, our African AU should start having teeth and probably say we should not regulate Africa? And what you're rightfully saying to say, if I'm getting into Mozambique, why do they require a passport for me to get into Mozambique? Yeah. Why do they require an investment license for me to get into Mozambique, for me to get into Malawi, for me to get into Togo? Yeah. What can be done?
Exactly, because one of the things, and you actually look at the African Union, I think we've made a step in the right direction through the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. But
is it working now?
That's the biggest challenge now. Exactly, because we actually find that it's slow implementation of it. I remember there was this conference that was done, and the AFC FTA Secretary General Sam Kelemeni was actually speaking more about actually saying that okay, we need to have a borderless Africa. But one of the things that you actually find is that it's not enough just to say that Africa should be borderless at the end of the day. But what you're actually saying is that from a business perspective, right, we should have a way to actually evaluate if a business is doing well in South Africa, if they want to come and set up in Zimbabwe, they should actually not be given all of these things to say investment license and everything. Just an incorporation is enough. Because right now, if you look at the African problem, we're actually saying that by 2030, we are going to have 30 million young people under the age of 25 who are going to be introduced into the job market. And these are unemployed.
Exactly.
Young people that are there. You're actually saying that if you are looking at 30 million, that's equivalent maybe to the population of Zambia plus half the population of Zimbabwe.
Exactly.
And you're actually looking to say that all those young people do not have jobs. And this is not only maybe a single country problem. It's not a Nigerian problem.
Yeah, it's not Nigeria.
Most more people will say that, okay, it's a Nigerian problem since Nigeria is the most people in Africa. But we're actually saying that, no, it's an African problem at the end of the day.
Like yesterday, Christmas Day, I received over 300 CVs. On the 25th of December.
Exactly.
It simply shows that because in Zimbabwe, I think I got into Zambia, it's also the same problem.
Yeah.
Most of the youths are unemployed, educated. These people, they're getting into the streets. But we're saying there are companies which can invest into Zambia and create employment for these young people.
For the young people,
and they're asked to fork out a million. And also you look at Zimbabwe as well. Zimbabwe, to only get a ZIDA license, I think you need to fork out more than $5,000 US dollars. That's just the
fees.
The fees of facilitating a license. And aren't we shooting ourselves under the foot?
Yeah, definitely. Because at the end of the day, we're shooting ourselves in the foot. Because we're actually saying that when it comes to African problems, they're going to be solved by Africans. But at the end of the day, you actually find that even when it comes to regulation, some of our regulations, one of the things that you actually find even for Africa is over-regulated. It's currently we're at a point whereby
even opening a bank account.
Even opening a bank account.
Sometimes opening a bank account is hard than someone who is trying to get a gun license.
Exactly.
Zambia, Zimbabwe, most of the Southern African countries, it's very difficult to open just a bank account.
Just a bank account.
And someone wants to deposit money, but we're making it tough for him. I don't know. Like what you are saying.
Exactly. Because you actually find that right now, even when it actually comes to, I think I'll even go back to the AFCFTA. Was one of the things that the AFCFTA has to address urgently is actually even the issue for currency at the end of the day. Because you look at currency, right now it's difficult. It's almost impossible to convert rand to kwacha without going through the US dollar. It's impossible to convert maybe the pula to the kwacha without actually going through the US dollars. So at the end of the day, they're actually saying that you look at Africa right now, I think we are now almost a $2 trillion economy. What stops us from actually having maybe an African dollar? That we actually know that, okay, this is going to be our intermediary currency maybe for Africa, controlled maybe through the African Development Bank or some other institution that we have control over. Because as long as you don't solve also even when it comes to the currency issue, it's going to be difficult for African countries to actually trade with each other, to actually move goods. Because at the end of the day, someone maybe wants to export from Zambia to South Africa. The challenge with converting to the US dollar is you actually find that, okay, you are then actually converting, which actually means that you've lost value when you actually get to do that conversion. And then when you get to reconvert to the rand again, you're going to say that you're going to lose value or you're just going to maybe gain nominal value from that. So that's also something that actually needs to be addressed. But I think at the heart of this matter is actually the issue of regulation. To actually say that some of these regulations that we have, to be necessary? Frank, they are unnecessary.
Like right now, they're still asking us to present a physical copy of an ID. In this era. And they're asking for a physical passport, and they'll ask you to fill in a 6-page form.
Exactly.
With details. And
with
they're
details.
Like, and same details. Some of the forms are actually duplicating the details.
The details.
So, but anyway, I think so much, Mr. Tamuka. Yeah. So the issue now is about, yes, as much as Africa is overregulated, as much as we still have a lot to be done. That's why we are saying at this podcast, this is JailBreak Africa. Africa needs to come out of the jail. We need to start. Sometimes it's all about the other people, the other races which are actually put us in jail, but it's ourselves who are to blame. We cannot also blame our leaders. We are supposed to be starting to participate and also make change in Africa. But anyway, for the person who wants to invest into Zambia, I know that most of the people, they want to invest into Zambia. The last time I was in Zambia, I noticed that the economy of Zambia is being controlled by foreigners. You look at Chinese, I think Chinese have their own bank, the Bank of China.
The Bank of China,
yes. And Indians, they've got their Indo-Zambia Bank. Tell me, what can be done? What can be done if I want to invest into Zambia? What's the procedure?
Okay.
Like so, I'm an African, I want to invest into Zambia. Is there a difference between Africans who wants to invest into Zambia or other international guys wants to invest into Zambia? What happens in that case?
So basically, as an African who actually wants to invest in Zambia, I'm going to highlight because there isn't a difference because an investor at the end of the day is an investor.
Yeah.
Unless if you're then maybe going through the free economic zones, but I'll highlight on that later on. So basically, to invest into Zambia, you have two options. So it's either you can register your company as a foreign subsidiary. That's if you have a company that is actually operating from your parent country. Or you can register a new company basically as a limited liability company. And one of the things that you actually find is that in terms of the regulations, because when it comes to registration, if you are going to be registering a limited liability company, one of the requirements is to actually say that for every foreign director that you have, you're going to need a local Zambian director. So one of the things that you actually find is that let's maybe say if you have 5 directors, let's maybe say from South Africa, it actually means that you also need 5 local Zambian directors. That's if you are registering as a limited liability company. But in terms of the shareholding, you can have a single shareholder on that particular company. But if you are registering as a foreign subsidiary, you actually find that you can have 5 foreign directors, but you need at least one Zambian director who actually even act as a company secretary on your behalf, which is basically the major difference that is there. So when it comes to incorporation, that's the basics for the incorporation. And then after you're done with the registration, you actually find that you can then get to actually use your company papers to open a bank account at the end of the day. And you also need a local director so that you can actually get to open the bank account. But one of the things that I actually find is that with some banks, you're actually even allowed to be a signatory on the account, even if you are actually a foreigner for that, as long as you actually have a local Zambian director. That is basically for the banks. And then once you're actually done with the registration, depending on the industry that you are with, because there are some industries that are actually regulated where you can't operate without actually maybe being registered with the body that actually looks after that particular industry. Take, for example, if you have a construction company. If you have a construction company, it's a requirement that you actually need to be registered with the National Council for Construction, which is basically the NCC. And one of the things that you even find now that for the NCC, because when it then comes to the regulations now, that's where the regulations will then come into place to actually say that for the NCC, even if you don't have a registered company in Zambia, you can actually register for the NCC as a foreign company. Okay. But your fees will actually be more.
So that you can do tenders.
So that you can actually do government tenders, even when it actually comes to large-scale contracts and everything. Because one of the things that you actually find is that if you're going to be going through the building process, and let's maybe say you're not registered, and then you register a construction company, you ignore the NCC, you get a project for a client, because still clients can give you a project even if you don't have the papers.
Exactly.
what would then happen is that as you start constructing now, when the council comes for inspection, they're going to ask you to say that, okay, are you certified with the NCC? Usually, when you are not now, the trouble is going to actually come, which is generally what you're actually looking at. For miners, you also need to be registered with the Ministry of Mines and Mineral Development. So there are also even registrations that you have to do depending on the mineral that you're actually doing, as well as whether you're going to be large scale or you're actually going to be a small scale miner. And the other thing also that's imperative for me to highlight is even when it actually comes to the issue for tax. Because in Zambia, for businesses, you actually find that there are 3 major taxes that are there. You're actually looking at your turnover tax. Because usually the regulation is that if your revenue is less than 890,000 kwacha per year, then you have to be registered for turnover tax, which is 4% of whatever revenue you've actually made for that month. In those returns, you have to submit them on a monthly basis. And then apart from turnover tax, you have the corporate income tax, which I believe is currently one of the highest within the SADC region right now, which is currently at 30%.
30% income tax?
Income tax, yes.
Damn.
So currently in terms of the corporate income tax, it's at 30%. And then you also have the VAT, depending on the goods that you actually be supplying. So you also have the VAT, which is currently at 16%. So those are basically
the most in SADC.
Yeah, it's also up there when it actually comes to SADC. So those are some of the taxes that you're actually looking at when it comes to setting up. But one of the things was, I think even starting from next week, will actually be on the 1st of January. And in Zambia, there are basically rebates that you actually put. Let's maybe say if you're a cotton farmer and you're actually looking to expand into Zambia, because land in Zambia it's abundant. And if you're basically a cotton farmer, you actually find that when importing your equipment, when importing your inputs, all the duties were actually removed, so that to actually encourage the growth of the textiles industry in Zambia. So that's basically an advantage. It's also even the same thing. If you're going to be importing electric vehicles, let's maybe say you have your Tesla, you won't actually be paying duty in Zambia, which is also hybrid, which is also a plus. So for hybrid, there are actually incentives that you actually put. So yes, you're going to be paying duty, but it's going to be reduced at the end of the day. But for full electric vehicles, even when it actually comes to ICT equipment, let's maybe say there is someone with a video production company. You can actually import your cameras, you can import your microphones without actually needing to pay duty on those at the end of the day. So there are basically some incentives that are actually given to certain industries just to encourage the growth of those industries.
Okay. That's great. So let us talk. We have talked about the industry. You've talked about the regulation. What about the environment? Because when you're talking to investors, something which they also consider is the environment, security of their investment. How do you rate Zambia? And do you think is Zambia a friendly nation? Am I safe when I'm in Zambia? What do you think?
All right. So in terms of Zambia being a friendly nation, Zambia is one of the friendliest nations that you actually find within Africa itself. Okay. In terms of the people, because the people they are loving people. And then you also even look at the volatility, let's maybe say politically. I think there haven't been any incidences of political violence that have actually been happening, exactly. which is basically a good thing. And then you also even have the rule of law, which is also something that is very important that investors actually get to look at when intending to invest in a country. And then the other thing is also even when it actually comes to policy consistency itself. So basically when it comes to policy consistency, because I can also even highlight for a fact to actually say that when the new budget was announced, like for 2024, one of the things that I actually find is that in terms of the actual tax changes, that were done in Zambia, we actually basically tax breaks and tax incentives, not tax increases. There were actually no increases that were actually done on the taxes for Zambia. which is a plus. Because at the end of the day, you want to come to an economy to actually say that if you're going to be planning, let's maybe say for a 30% income tax rate, you don't want to maybe wake up and hear that that is now 35 or it's now 50%, right? So it's something that that they've actually been consistent on in terms of the tax policies, which is something that is very good. And then the other issue that I also want to highlight, I'd forgotten to highlight that, is you actually find that within Zambia, you also have free economic zones that are there. So you're actually looking at there is actually the Lusaka free economic zones. There is also even another one that you can actually even access through COMESA as well, in terms of basically the free trade zones. So that if you're actually coming through the free trade zones, you actually find that you'll be able to trade without maybe always having access to a certain specific tax break that is there at the end of the day. But one of the things that I've seen, because I haven't seen a lot of African companies take advantage of it. I think the major players that have basically taken advantage of those free trade zones are mainly actually looking at Chinese companies, you're looking at Indian companies, even some of the big players that are there. And the major reason is mainly due to the paperwork that is basically required for you to get to access that. And I think it's not a Zambian thing. I think almost all African countries, they have free trade zones.
Special economic zones. But for you to get into that special economic zone,
economic zone, it's usually a headache. It's a headache. So most people, they just prefer trading without at the end of the day. But those are also even some of the things that you could even look into when actually looking at Zambia as a potential investment destination. And it's also important to highlight even when it actually comes to banks. So when it comes to banks, you actually find that in Zambia you have a lot of large commercial banks. I think by count right now there are 16 in terms of the large commercial banks. And some of these banks, these are basically your international banks, like maybe the United Bank for Africa, you have ABSA, you have FNB, you have Standard Chartered. So those are actually banks maybe that actually have a presence in other African countries. So someone, let's maybe say in Africa, who's coming from Nigeria, if you are already on using UBA in Nigeria, then you actually find that in Zambia, it's easy for you to set up that. If you are from South Africa, maybe you're familiar with FNB or you're familiar with Stanbic or you're familiar with ABSA, you can actually get to also even experience the same level of service in Zambia, which is also an advantage.
Okay, that's great. So what about, just probably to wind up, in terms of language, and probably I've noticed that Zambia is one of the central country I think it's the most central country in SADC.
Yeah.
Because I think it borders with about 8 countries, if I'm not mistaken.
8 countries.
I'm talking of Mozambique, Malawi, Namibia, Tanzania.
You have DRC, you have Zaire.
Is it Kenya?
Yeah, you have Zaire, exactly. You also have Malawi, you have Botswana, and then you have Zimbabwe. So I what about the language and also in terms of the human capital? Because I've heard when you're also investing in these countries, sometimes when you're moving into South Africa, you have to consider also to say probably, am I supposed to move with my workforce from Nigeria, or can I move with my workforce from Zimbabwe? Can I move with my workforce from Botswana? Or I would rather have the workforce in Zambia, probably sending one person who understands the company, and probably I'm going to have all this skeleton stuff in Zambia. Okay. So in terms of the language, because one of the things that they actually find about on the language is that the universally spoken language in Zambia is actually English. So the people in Zambia, they speak English more. Although you also even have languages that are local to Zambians. You have Nyanja, you also have Bemba, you also have Tonga. So those are actually some of the languages that the locals speak. But most of the locals, they're even comfortable speaking with English. So communication is not much of an issue. And then when it actually comes to the workforce, and because one of the things that you actually find is that in terms of training institutions, Zambia has a lot of training institutions in terms of universities, in terms of colleges, vocational training centers. So whatever skill you are looking for, you can actually get to find it in Zambia. But basically for someone who's actually intending to set up, was you actually find that if you're going to be setting up in a new territory, of course, you are going to actually need maybe 1 or 2 people coming from head office so that they can actually help to establish. But in terms of actually looking for other talent, you can actually get to find it within Zambia. And you can also even get to train it within Zambia as well. Because one of the things that you actually find is that for Zambia, in terms of the population, the youth population, it's vast. You have 30 million young people that are in the country under the age of 25.
Okay.
It's a very big number that is there.
It's huge.
It's huge number. So it's just a matter of actually looking for the talent that you actually want, and then you can get to train in terms of the talent. And one of the things that you even find is that I think since for the past 2 years, government have basically been investing in this in the constitutional development funds, basically CDF funds. And through that, there are basically these vocational training institutions that have actually been set up, which is under TVETA. So you actually find that those vocational training institutions, they've been training youths like on various trade skills, maybe installations, bricklaying, basically any plumbing, etc. So there are a lot of youths that are eager to be employed and actually eager to get into the job market to also contribute to their economy as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mr. Tamuka. Thank you,
That's
Tamuka.
all right.
Zikomo Kwambiri Tukwalumba. So, guys, this was your podcast. Today we had a special guest from Zambia, Tamuka Chinjende. So he's the managing director of M&J Zambia. And I think he's been leading in terms of getting investment into Zambia. He's playing a part, also complementing the government to make as many companies invest into Zambia. So this is JailBreak Africa. So here what we're trying to achieve is to say, how can we liberate the economy of Africa? How can we remove those chains which are within our minds to say probably Africa will remain a poor country. Africa is not capable. Africa is always the last continent. Africa is even smaller on the global map. And I don't know why. Is it smaller than United States of Africa? United States of America, whilst we are actually bigger in terms of the land size. So these are the stories which are going to demystify here. We'll be bringing a lot of guests. We'll be bringing a lot of stories. We'll be actually checking in each and every African country, talking about Togo, talking about Zaire, DRC. We want to know what is happening in Africa. We want to know what is happening in Chad. Feel free to subscribe on our YouTube channel, The Chartered Vendor. And also feel free to follow us on our Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, which is now X. You can X us on the X platform. And I'm so excited. It's me, Jerry Monya Zungu, The Chartered Vendor. Bye-bye for now.